Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind us that one decision can change an entire life. And if you believe good people deserve a second chance, hit the like button and stay until the very end, because what this CEO discovered on one ordinary office desk changed everything. At 6:17 on a rainy Friday evening, Daniel Carter stood outside the elevator of the company he had dedicated 8 years of his life to. In his hands was a small cardboard box. Inside were a family photograph, an old coffee mug, a child's drawing, 2 pens, and a tiny wooden keychain his daughter had made for him at school. But there was one thing missing from that box. Daniel wasn't taking his anger with him. He wasn't taking revenge. He wasn't even taking the last paycheck he was still owed. Instead, he had left something behind on his desk. Something that would make the CEO freeze when she found it. Something that would force her to question the biggest decision of her career. And she had no idea that by firing Daniel Carter, she might have just fired the one person who had been secretly saving her company. Daniel had started that morning like every other morning. At 5:30 a.m., his alarm rang in the tiny apartment he shared with his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. He opened his eyes, looked at the ceiling for a few seconds, and listened to the rain tapping against the window. Then he heard small footsteps. "Daddy?" Daniel smiled. "Good morning, sweetheart." Lily climbed onto the edge of his bed, still wearing her pajamas. "Are you going to work?" "I am." "Even though it's raining?" Daniel laughed softly. "Especially because it's raining." She handed him a folded piece of paper. "I made something for you." Daniel opened it. It was a colorful drawing of a man wearing a superhero cape. Above the drawing, Lily had written in uneven letters, "My daddy is my hero." Daniel stared at it longer than he expected. He had been a single father for almost 6 years. There had been no easy days. After Lily's mother passed away unexpectedly, Daniel had learned how to do everything himself. He learned how to braid hair badly. He learned how to cook simple dinners. He learned how to check homework while answering work emails. And most importantly, he learned that sometimes being strong didn't mean you never broke down. Sometimes being strong meant getting up anyway. Daniel kissed Lily on the forehead. "Thank you." "You're welcome." She smiled. Then she asked the question that always made his heart hurt. "Daddy, are we okay?" Daniel knew exactly what she meant. Were they going to be okay financially? Would they still have their apartment? Could she still go to school? Would there still be food in the refrigerator? Daniel smiled and hugged her. "We're always going to be okay." He didn't know how true those words would become by the end of the day. At 8:02 a.m., Daniel walked into Sterling Heights Corporation. The building was enormous, covered in glass and steel, with hundreds of employees moving through its lobby. Daniel wasn't a manager. He wasn't an executive. His title was Senior Operations Analyst. But over the years, he had become the person people called when something went wrong. When numbers didn't make sense, Daniel found the problem. When a shipment disappeared, Daniel tracked it. When a major client threatened to leave, Daniel discovered why. He rarely received credit. But he never complained. His desk was on the 32nd floor. Daniel sat down, opened his laptop, and immediately noticed something strange. A series of financial reports didn't match. He spent the next 2 hours investigating. By noon, he discovered a serious problem. A major supplier had changed its contract terms. If the company continued paying the new rates for another month, Sterling Heights could lose millions of dollars. Daniel immediately prepared a report. He sent it to his manager. Then he sent it to the finance department. And finally, because the situation was serious, he requested a meeting with the CEO. Her name was Victoria Grant. Victoria was known throughout the company as brilliant, demanding, and almost impossible to impress. She had built the company from a regional business into a national corporation. People respected her. Some feared her. Very few knew her personally. Daniel had only spoken to her 3 times. The 4th time would be very different. At 2:15 p.m., Daniel received an email. "Mr. Carter, come to my office immediately." He stared at the message. Something felt wrong. He walked upstairs. Victoria's assistant opened the door. "She's waiting for you." Daniel entered. Victoria was standing beside the window. The city stretched behind her. "Sit down," she said. Daniel sat. She placed a folder on the desk. "Do you know what's inside?" Daniel shook his head. "Your performance report." She opened it. "You're late twice this month." Daniel swallowed. "Both times I had childcare issues. I stayed late to make up the hours." Victoria didn't respond. She continued. "You've also requested schedule flexibility. My daughter is 8. I know." Daniel looked surprised. "You know?" "I know everything that affects my employees' productivity." Daniel lowered his eyes. Victoria closed the folder. "I'm terminating your employment effective immediately." For a moment, Daniel didn't understand what he had heard. "I'm sorry." "You're fired." The room became silent. Daniel looked at her. "But why?" Victoria's expression remained cold. "Because this company needs people who can give it everything." Daniel took a breath. "I have given this company everything." Apparently not enough. Daniel's hands tightened. He wanted to argue. He wanted to tell her about the nights he worked after Lily went to sleep. He wanted to tell her about the weekends he spent fixing problems nobody else noticed. He wanted to tell her about the financial reports sitting in her inbox that could save the company millions. But something stopped him. Pride. Not the kind of pride that makes a person arrogant. The kind that tells you not to beg someone who has already decided your worth. Daniel stood. "Okay." Victoria looked slightly surprised. "That's it?" Daniel nodded. "I won't argue with you." He walked toward the door. Then he stopped. He turned around. "Ms. Grant?" "Yes?" "One day, you might discover that the person you considered replaceable was the person holding everything together." Victoria's face hardened. "I doubt that." Daniel nodded. "I hope you're right." Then he left. Back at his desk, Daniel slowly packed his things. His co-workers watched. Some looked uncomfortable. One woman quietly said, "I'm sorry." Daniel smiled. "Thank you." He placed Lily's drawing into the box. Then he picked up his family photograph. He stared at it for a few seconds. His eyes became wet. But he didn't cry. Not there. Not in front of everyone. He closed the box. Then he noticed something on his computer screen. The financial report. The report Victoria had never opened. Daniel looked at it. Then he looked at the office around him. He could have deleted it. He could have taken the information with him. He could have said, "Not my problem anymore." But Daniel wasn't that kind of man. He opened a blank document. He spent the next 20 minutes preparing one final report. He attached every relevant file. He highlighted every problem. He explained exactly how the company could avoid millions of dollars in losses. Then he printed the report. But instead of leaving it on his manager's desk, he placed it on his own desk. On top of it, he placed a handwritten note. Then he walked away. The elevator doors closed. Daniel didn't look back. He went home. Lily ran toward him. "Daddy." Daniel dropped the box and hugged her. "Hey, superhero." She looked at the box. Did you get fired? Daniel froze. Why would you ask that? Because you look sad. Daniel smiled through the pain. Sometimes grown-ups have bad days. Are you going to be okay? He hugged her tighter. Yes. That night, Daniel cooked dinner. He helped Lily with her homework. He listened to her talk about school. He laughed when she told him a silly joke. And after she went to bed, Daniel sat alone in the kitchen. For the first time that day, he allowed himself to cry. Meanwhile, on the 32nd floor, Victoria was still working. It was nearly 10 p.m. The rain had become heavier. The building was almost empty. Victoria walked through the dark office. She passed Daniel's desk. Then she stopped. Something caught her attention. A white envelope. She picked it up. Her name was written on it. Victoria Grant. She opened it. Inside was a single page. She began reading. The note didn't insult her. It didn't demand revenge. It didn't even mention his firing. Instead, Daniel had written, "Ms. Grant, I don't know if you'll ever read this. But if you do, please check the attached financial report before making any decisions about the supplier contract. I believe the company can still avoid a major loss. I know I'm no longer an employee, but I couldn't walk away knowing people could lose their jobs because I stayed silent." Victoria stopped reading. Her eyes moved to the report. She opened it. Within minutes, her expression changed. She called the CFO. "Get to the office. It's almost 10:30. "I don't care." The CFO arrived 20 minutes later. Victoria handed him the report. "Tell me this isn't real." He studied the numbers. His face became pale. "Oh my God. What? This is real. How much?" He looked at her. "If we don't stop the contract, the losses could exceed $12 million. Victoria went silent. 12 million. She looked back at Daniel's desk. The man she had fired 3 hours earlier had just saved the company from a $12 million disaster. But then she noticed something else. Beside the report was Lily's drawing. A little girl. A superhero. And beneath it, "My daddy is my hero." Victoria stared at it. For the first time that night, she wasn't thinking about the company. She was thinking about Daniel. A father who had just lost his job. A father who could have walked away angry. A father who could have let the company suffer. But he didn't. Victoria whispered. "What did I do?" She immediately called Daniel. No answer. She called again. Nothing. She asked security for his address. Then she drove through the rain. When she arrived at Daniel's apartment, the lights were still on. She knocked. Daniel opened the door. He froze. Victoria stood there, soaked from the rain. Neither spoke for several seconds. Finally, Victoria said, "I was wrong." Daniel looked at her. She held up the report. "You saved the company tonight." Daniel didn't respond. "You saved $12 million. Still nothing." Victoria's voice became quieter. "And you did it after I fired you." Daniel looked down. "I didn't do it for you. I know. I did it because people work there." Victoria nodded. "That's exactly why I'm here." She handed him an envelope. Daniel didn't take it. "What is it?" "Your new contract." He looked confused. "I don't want my old job back." "It's not your old job." Victoria took a breath. "I want you to become director of operations." Daniel stared at her. "I'll double your salary." He shook his head. "This isn't about money." "I know." She looked toward the apartment. Then tell me what it is about. Daniel looked back at her. It's about being able to take care of my daughter without constantly wondering if my job is going to disappear. Victoria nodded slowly. Then that's what I want to give you. She paused. And I'm going to make sure every employee here understands something. Daniel waited. Being a good employee doesn't mean sacrificing your family. Daniel's eyes became emotional. Victoria continued. I judged you because I saw your schedule, but I never bothered to see your life. Daniel finally accepted the envelope. The next Monday, Daniel walked back into Sterling Heights. But this time, he wasn't carrying a cardboard box. He was walking beside Lily. She held his hand. Employees stood as they entered. Some applauded. Daniel looked embarrassed. Victoria stood at the entrance. She smiled. Welcome back. Lily looked at her father. Is she your boss? Daniel smiled. She is. Lily looked at Victoria seriously. Are you going to be nice to my daddy? The entire lobby became silent. Victoria laughed for the first time in years. I promise. Daniel smiled. And that was the beginning of something bigger than a new job. Victoria changed the company's policies. Parents were given more flexibility. Employees were judged by results, not by whether they stayed late. And Daniel became the leader he had always been without realizing it. Months later, the company recovered from the financial crisis. Profits increased. Employee satisfaction improved. And Daniel's office became one of the busiest places in the building. But he kept one thing from his old desk. Lily's drawing. He framed it. And placed it on the wall behind him. Underneath it, he added one sentence. Never underestimate the person you don't take the time to understand. One evening, Victoria walked into his office. She looked at the drawing. You still have that? Daniel smiled. Of course. Victoria nodded. I think that drawing saved me too. Daniel looked at her. How? She smiled. It reminded me that success means nothing if you forget the people standing beside you. Daniel looked at the city through his window. His life wasn't perfect. There were still bills. There were still difficult days. There were still moments when being a single father was exhausting. But he no longer felt invisible. And Victoria was no longer the CEO who believed people were numbers. She had learned something too. Sometimes the person sitting quietly at the desk nobody notices is the person carrying more responsibility than anyone realizes. And sometimes losing a job isn't the end of someone's story. Sometimes it's the moment that finally forces the world to recognize their worth. Years later, Daniel would still remember that rainy Friday evening. He would remember the cardboard box. The elevator. The fear. The uncertainty. But most of all, he would remember the note he left behind. Because he had written it thinking he was leaving his old life behind. He never imagined that a simple act of integrity would open the door to a better one. So if you're watching this story because you're going through a difficult season in your own life, remember Daniel. You may feel overlooked. You may feel unappreciated. You may feel like nobody sees how hard you're working. But your value isn't determined by someone else's opinion of you. Keep doing the right thing. Keep showing up. Keep your dignity. And never let someone else's decision convince you that you have no worth. Because sometimes the door that closes in front of you is simply making room for a better door to open. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more emotional and inspiring stories. And tell us in the comments. What would you have done if you were Daniel, walked away quietly, or fought to prove your worth? Thank you for watching. Until the next story, remember. Your value doesn't disappear just because someone fails to recognize it.